Up next is Al, with pleasure, who has been at Zifo now for 4 months.
Just about.
Oops. That didn't work well. Yeah, you wanted to. He's been at Zifo for 4 months, and prior to Zifo, he was with PerkinElmer for 9 years. He has also worked at Merck, Pfizer, sounds familiar, Unilever, and today he'll be talking about lab computing, the forefront of scientific data. Over to you.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you everyone, and thank you Margaret. As she said, I've been with Zifo for about 4 months now. Definitely a different perspective from some of the other places I've been. It's great culturally and very exciting place to be. Today I want to talk to you about lab computing. So lab computing is a little bit different than some of the talks we've heard today, but still extremely vital to the overall process that we have, right? No? Down? There we go. So lab computing is really the forefront of everything that we're talking about today. Without the lab computing teams that I support, right, we would not be able to generate all the data that you guys are all trying to navigate as best as possible. So what lab computing is all the computers that are inside your laboratories connected to instrumentation, making sure that they're wired properly, making sure that their software is installed properly, making sure that we have all the user accounts that are necessary, also configuring and making sure that there are the proper integration points as needed, right? So we play that role where we are talking to the scientists, we're embedded in the scientists, we have boots on the ground. I try to explain to folks that it's not really much like a help desk, right? But you still need that IT component, right? So we have the IT, which is your computers, your peripherals, everything associated there. But you also have a component of of the knowledge, right? I was having a conversation at lunch today about what are we looking for in the folks that are doing this type of work. Because you have the IT people who don't really understand the science, but you also have scientists who have little by little learned IT. Those tend to be the most successful, what I find, because it's a lot harder for a true IT developer or help desk person to understand a benzene ring, but it is a lot easier for a scientist who's doing chemistry or biology or chemical engineering, right, to understand the IT component because IT is everywhere. Right? We're learning it, we're using it at home, we're using it for any number of things. So I find that tends to be a little easier, and they already have that scientific required knowledge to help communicate through the labs, right? The infrastructure piece, they need to be able to communicate with the infrastructure teams, your own internal infrastructure teams, so that's something else that comes about. And then instrumentation. So one of the things I've found when hiring lab computing personnel is if I go get a help desk person who doesn't really understand the labs, when they get in front of an HPLC, they kind of panic. They're like, oh, can I touch this? What's gonna happen? I don't wanna screw anything up. So you're looking for people that are comfortable in the environment, who understand that instrumentation piece, right? So as you all know, scientists are dealing with a very disparate lab, a lot of different components. We just talked about it, right? They might have to your scientists may have to interact with instrument vendors. They may have to interact with software vendors that are just doing the software, so your LIMS, your ELNs. Your desktop support, so your own internal IT desktop support, your infrastructure teams, and your facilities teams. People that are moving your instruments around and making sure that they're properly configured. So that's a lot to put on your analysts or your scientists when realistically, that's not what they're here to do. They should be running your science. And I think the earlier talk where we're trying to give time back to our scientists, that's the most important thing that we're looking to do here. So That's where our lab computing managed services come in, right? We provide a single point of contact that can help wrangle the cats, talk to all of these vendors, talk to all of these internal teams, and then communicate back to the scientists what needs to be done or what the path forward is. So that in and of itself presents a huge advantage to your scientific teams and your scientific community because you have somebody working that role. One of the challenges, though, that you are going to get faced and that we face all the time is you have your CFOs or whoever's holding the purse strings, right, wondering why would we go this route? If it's already been paid for, because in their mind it's paid for internally as part of the project cost, why would we bring in a lab computing person? So the reality is we don't want scientists doing their own IT. That's not what they're paid for. That's not what they went to go get their PhD for. They came to do science, to develop, to study the data, everything that you guys have been talking about today. That's what they're there for. We should not have them worrying about the connections behind the computer. We should not worry about them, oh, we lost connectivity. Now I got to get on the phone and call the help desk. That's where we come in, right? You have thousands of instrumentation. You have hundreds of scientists. You have multiple labs across the world. We can help standardize that. We can help funnel the pain points and kind of run interference for you in that. So one of the things I do like to call out here is that typically in these large organizations, right, and also in the biotechs, the percentage that is spent on actual IT is only about 1% of the overall budget of your IT lab. That's your instrumentation, that's your scientist cost, everything else. So the IT is like the forgotten child. But it's so important, as everybody else in this room understands and sees. So this slide shows you, and this is all data collected from Accenture and other things, other surveys from around 2020. So 74% of IT is self-supported, right? So people are handling everything internal. One of the things that we're also looking at here is we're dealing with aged out operating systems. So some of the projects that we still have are doing Windows refreshes or getting Windows up to Windows 10 off of Windows 7, right? So Windows 10 was released about 8 years ago. So it's taken 8 years to replace out an operating system that's probably going to get replaced by the time we start rolling them out, right? Windows 11's out there. Not everybody's going to it, but it's there, right? The mismatch spend, this is what I just touched upon, right? 1% of pharmaceuticals companies is IT budget, right? Scientist satisfaction, and I think that this also is important to call out because I'm sure most of you guys have had internal surveys about how is our IT doing, right? And 60% of those customers are dissatisfied with their internal IT, partially because those people are focused on one particular aspect of the IT. Whether their infrastructure, well, we only do infrastructure. Are you network? Well, we only do network. They don't understand the science, right? Here, if you can provide people that do, you're halfway there, right? You're going to improve that satisfaction because you're bringing someone in that talks their language, right? Wasted time, right? 73% of scientists are complaining that their time is wasted, right? Failure to launch. We got 90% of an IT manager saying that the skill set was why we didn't get to launch, right? So how do we get over that? And then one of the other huge ones is cyber risk, right? Guys, I was working at Merck when we had the issue with the cybersecurity and they got the attack, right? That took them down for, yep. And we had to pull everybody over from PerkinElmer who was working on it at the time, right? You need to get out in front of it, right? That's part of the Windows refresh. That's part of why you can't have Windows 7 machines out there, right? Oh, it hurt. And people were working overtime, weekends. So how much money went into it because you had one failure point, right? So we need to help mitigate that as best we can. So now this slide is extremely busy, and I don't expect you all to look at everything, but this is really what everyone in this room has been talking about. How all of these applications, all of these systems, all of these expertise is working together, right? So you got the lab services support at the bottom, that's your lab computing. Then you got your application support, that's what a lot of today has been about, right? And then you have your security, your strategic decisions, things that are maybe more on the higher level, but everything here needs to work together in order to get our drugs to market faster. And that's where, lab computing may not feel like it's part of what was being discussed today, but it is, because without that first step, you're going to get absolutely destroyed. So, what does great support mean? And what does great support mean to me? Again, my job is to provide resources that can help bridge the gap for you, who can help talk across both the IT and the applications and the science, right? So we need to find that level of people, right? We want to give you the best possible information to make strategic decisions. So being an industry leader now, we can help guide you to the best LIMS, the best SDMS. How do we integrate? How can we bring all of that together? Make sure that it's secure so we're not dealing with any of that cybersecurity piece, right? And then really work to help the culture of your labs, right? Right now we have a customer, we're doing a Windows refresh project for them. So one of the main things is shaping the culture, explaining to them why this is important and how this is going to be beneficial. Because nobody wants change. Nobody wants change up front. But as you lay it out for them and you tell them the efficiencies that they're going to gain, the benefits that they're going to gain, then they're way more receptive to those kind of changes. Okay? So that's lab computing kind of in a nutshell. I went through a little quick, so Vinay has his full time. But any questions?
Any questions for Al? Don't get off the stage so quick. There may be a
I
question.
said thank you.
Yeah?
Go ahead.
Of course you have a question.
Al, how does this work with other scientific services that Zifo provides? What's the overlap or not? I'm just, maybe you can just speak to that, sorry.
No, it's actually great. So
Good question.
as that last slide kind of indicated, right, we are that first entry point. Because they're boots on the ground, they can help understand the environment. They can bring other opportunities to us to work with the application support. They work very closely with the application support team. Sometimes it becomes a very much a gray area, right? A perfect example is Empower Systems. Empower has the lace box. It has a hardware component. It has a software component, right? You need to be able to talk both, right? We need the lab computing teams to build those lace boxes, to do the initial configuration, and then the application support teams can come in and do customized reports, any kind of integrations with other Waters products, or let's say a New Genesis or something like that. So it's the bridge, right? The lab computing team is the bridge and like kind of the door opener to the rest of the Zifo managed services.
Hi,
Hey.
I just want to, I remember you from Mark.
Exactly.
I just want to build on that question a little bit. So a lot of companies will use a managed service for their infrastructure and, their, we call it site support, people's laptops and stuff. And what we found is that there's sort of this friction between the lab computing environment and then what happens on people's laptops. When they're trying to analyze their data and stuff. So are you looking at all with maybe how to build those relationships constructively with those third-party managed service providers so that there's no white space between those.
Yeah, so, and it's an excellent point because you have the desktop teams that are supporting your day-to-day laptop. You have the same software package installed in the lab, and you need to make sure that they work across both, both environments, really. And I know Merck had a lab image, and a lot of customers have the lab image, and then there's the regular desktop image, right? So you do need to be able to work with them. We have gotten a lot better over the course of probably year and a half or two. I think actually since COVID, because everybody started working remote, right? So you had to be able to interact and interface with those types of systems. And even though we were only handling the lab, there was a lot of times where the desktop team would reach out to our teams and say, hey, how do we get this off the ground? Or what does this software even do? And that's where the expertise of having somebody with a little scientific knowledge helps the desktop team come in. I feel like, and don't get me wrong, but I do feel like the desktop team sometimes is more territorial because they always feel like that the lab computing team is trying to take their job. And they're not, they just serve a different purpose. I know a customer that we tried to explain it to was trying to save money. It was a smaller customer. And they were like, well, why can't my desktop team do it? Because if you're gonna have your desktop team try to handle the software on your instruments, you're gonna have really cranky scientists when they can't do it. So.
Any other questions?
One more.
So I have two quick ones. The first one is, in many labs when we're working with customers, they have machines that aren't networked on purpose because they're Windows 95,
Yep.
Windows 98, Windows XP. I'm curious as to how you're how are you recommending that those customers address those problems?
My recommendation is usually to have a dedicated VLAN that can isolate these things, these systems. You might be able to do them by function or pool. It depends how many there are, right? But if there's only a handful, then you could probably put them all on the same VLAN. But if there's a couple hundred, then I would have like all the Agilents on one, or maybe some screening ones on the other. That way, you're not even going to cross or risk crossing across the VLANs.
So then when the data, so they still want to get the data off of that, right? Are you then like doing some protected network scanning on the way out of that VLAN?
On the way out.
Okay, I see. All right.
Yep.
Second question was your slide of all the different spends and percentages. The first one I think was around the labs doing their own IT. Was that scientists doing that, or do you mean like internal IT?
Internal to the company.
Okay, gotcha.
So it was not just the scientists, but what we've run into is a lot of shadow IT folks, right? And so they don't reside within the IT, but you have these super users, they have admin privileges, and you end up trying to navigate that environment. They're the best people when I bring them over because they've had that, but yeah.
Gotcha, thank you.
The shadow IT lab exists because the IT does not know what the hell they're doing in the laboratory. So I'm sorry, as a former scientist, I tell people do not touch my instruments because they screwed it up.
They get scientific titles, and then that's what they do, yeah, out of necessity.
I should say that I'm the head of IT. I have a lot of experience both in R&D IT side. I was bioinformatics engineer at some point, and even around commercial IT as well. And I very much appreciate the slide deck here because that was an experience, but there are ways to turn it around with partners like Zifo or even internally. And I've done it more than once. And there is a lot of great partnerships, almost like marriages,
Exactly.
between IT and scientists when things are changed, and it's a good partnership. And part of this is just personal experience working in very large and very small company, currently very small. Part of it is education. Scientists can help educate IT. Why is it important to have this machine running and transferring data? And IT can educate scientists on what are the better ways of transferring data. not running with USB
USB
sticks around.
sticks, exactly.
So it's an important topic, but it is solvable, and I know that that's a great experience for all.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and we're here to help you solve it, honestly.
Wait,
One more? Sure.
wait.
Anyways, yeah, I was talking to Margaret. It's been a while since I connected with Zifo, so I was like really unaware of all the new service offerings that are provided. So with the lab services, is it like you're placing full time, or you're doing remote, or is it part time available, or is it, you know, like how are you setting up these
Yes.
agreements? Yes. Oh, it's
But,
yes, okay.
but it's all going to be a different flavor for what your needs are. For lab computing, they tend to be on site full time because they need the hand holding or the hands-on experience inside the labs, right? If it's a very small lab, we can do like a part-time, especially if it's a region where we have other folks. We can bring somebody in 2 days a week to do these types of things, and then we'll modify the SLAs as necessary. Remote for lab computing doesn't always work, but remote works really well for app support. So what you do is you could have a mixed team where you have some lab computing folks with some app support teams, and they work together hand in hand.
No, thanks.
No problem.
This is why we have meetings like this, so you realize we do a lot more than just support IDPS templates.
Yeah, I mean, we use Zifo in this space too, like within AbbVie. That was one area where we had a bigger problem before. We used to have the lab computing personnel in the company, and then they used to leave every 2 years because they get better jobs, I guess. And then we were always under struggle trying to bridge the gap with the desktop engineers. So there was a decision made to actually change that and then actually use scientists in this space. So we can't afford the scientists, so that's why Zifo is helping us. It is working right now. Oh, okay. At least I can say that it is working, and as of last 2 years, I would say. Maybe 3 years down the lane, we'll talk again. If it is.
As I said, the scientists are hired to do the drug development. So if they are now going back and doing IT and hating the shadow IT people, then it's defeating the purpose, you know. So we have made a very, very cautious decision that we are first time going to try lab computing on site. That brings its own difficulties, but we wanted our scientists to do the drug development.
Yeah, like the same point, right? That's why removing the non-value added concept is what we were following. So that doesn't mean, that means that our scientists are not doing it. Somebody else probably is doing it. Or maybe automate wherever possible. But the main piece that we noticed is there is 1 or 2 employees that will be taking care of it, but there is always the additional need. Like sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. Like there was a project about, I need to replace 50 or 100 computers all of a sudden, and there are multiple softwares on it, lab-related softwares, and nobody has any idea about it. So that's when we started leveraging these resources, I would say. So still there are employees within the company or within the groups, but they are not like a 50-member team or a 100-member team, which is what we are augmenting using. That's how we are right now. I mean,
So one of the things that you mentioned there, which I think is nice for lab computing too, is that we can operate in the model of projects. So if you have a project that you need 100 instruments serviced and it's a 6-month project, we can come in and do that. Or we can also come in and do your ongoing support, right? And I think we have 4 people at AbbVie now, and in the Chicago area. We have a couple at the Genentech site. So yeah, it's definitely things that we're trying to bring you value to help expedite your drug discovery.
Okay, great. Thank you, Al.
Thank you, Mark.